This is Harm City Daily, your realest source for all the DMV's craziest and most violent local news stories. Thanks for tuning in. WJZ. The Aberdeen Police Department charged 2 juveniles as adults for attempted murder, first-degree assault, armed robbery, and related gun charges. Last Monday, at approximately 10:30 p.m., police responded to a report of shots fired in the 2000 block of Rockland Boulevard. Upon arrival, they located a 16-year-old male who reported that he had been robbed at gunpoint. The 16-year-old stated that he and a 20-year-old friend had come to Rockland Boulevard for a drug transaction. The fuck? When they arrived, they met up with 2 white males who pulled out a revolver and a pistol, demanding all of their belongings. The 20-year-old victim ran to his car and was shot by one of the suspects. The 16-year-old was then robbed of everything at gunpoint, including his shirt, shoes, and cell phone. Once the suspects fled the area, the 16-year-old victim went to a nearby home to seek help. Detectives responded to the scene and were able to identify the 2 potential suspects as 16-year-old Lucas Allen Clark and 17-year-old Ethan James Clark. Last Thursday, police carried out a search warrant of the brothers' home in the unit block of Walnut Lane. And found a loaded Smith & Wesson and a .38 special revolver matching the description of the gun used in the robbery. Police also found used and unused ammunition, drugs, and 2 pellet guns. Both Clark brothers are being held with no bond at the Harford County Detention Center. This one is courtesy of WBFF. Officers were called to the 1700 block of Madison Street for a shooting just after 4 p.m. on Monday. There they found a 25-year-old man who was shot in his butt. He was taken to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries to the butt. Central District shooting detectives are investigating this attempted assassination. On Wednesday at about 11:51 p.m., the Harford County Sheriff's Office responded to the 1200 block of Athens Court in Bel Air, Maryland, for a report of an attempted burglary. When deputies arrived on scene, they found a man identified as 38-year-old Mark Brandenburg, who was bleeding from apparent knife wounds to the upper body. He was still attempting to force his way into the home when deputies arrived. The initial investigation indicates that 26-year-old Stephen Brown was outside his home when he was confronted by Brandenburg. Brandenburg demanded Brown give him money, and when he refused, Brandenburg tried to follow Brown into his home. Brown attempted to secure his home, but Brandenburg shattered a glass pane in the front door and attempted to climb through it. Despite several warnings from Brown that he had a kitchen knife, Brandenburg continued his attempt to break in, and that's when Brown stabbed him with the knife multiple times.
Stupid!
Nearby neighbors responded to help Brown and stop Brandenburg from entering the home. At this time, the homeowner Brown is not expected to face charges in connection to this incident. Brandenburg was taken to the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center, where he is currently listed in stable condition. The investigation remains active and ongoing. WBAL-TV. According to officials, an officer shot and killed an armed man who police suspect was firing into a group of people. Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison said this started as an argument that turned violent between a group of people on the 1800 block of North Chester Street and another group at the next corner. The argument quickly escalated into gunfire and a man was shot in the leg. He is expected to survive his injuries. That gunshot then triggered a shot spotter alert.
A series of microphones designed to detect the sound of a gunshot and pinpoint its location to within 10 feet, instantly alerting police.
When officers arrived on the scene, they saw a man holding a handgun, who they suspected triggered the shot spotter alert. There is no information that he fired at officers, but the officer engaged the armed suspect shooting him. The man was pronounced dead at a hospital. The officer was not injured. An internal investigation is underway. Also, the body camera review and release policy has been initiated. WMAR2 News. At about 1:15 a.m., Baltimore County police officers responded to a burglar alarm at Catonsville Walmart. Upon arrival, officers found that the doors to the garden center had been pried open. Officers observed an unoccupied vehicle in the parking lot with various stolen items from the store. Moments later, the suspect, 24-year-old James Everett Nicholson, was found hiding behind a nearby tree. Nicholson was arrested and charged with theft, destruction of property, and second-degree burglary. He has been released on a $10,000 bond. So many confusing things about this story. If this guy loaded all that shit into his car, why didn't he just leave? WJZ. Southwest District Patrol officers responded to a report of shots being fired in the 2400 block of Tolley Street around 12 a.m. While canvassing the area, no victim was found. Shortly after, they were notified of a walk-in shooting victim at an area hospital. Riyadh Campbell, age 18, was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to his body. Despite medical efforts, doctors pronounced him dead a short time later. Baltimore WJZ. Police are searching for a man they say broke into a KFC located in the 2800 block of Greenmount Avenue on March 28, 2020 between the hours of 11:30 p.m. and 8:30 a.m. Officials say once inside, the suspect damaged property and took food. You can see in one of the pictures, this guy is actually eating food while he's there. Unless he was after the formula to those secret 11 herbs and spices, he was probably just hungry. This one's courtesy of the Baltimore Sun. At around 9:01 p.m. Friday, officers were dispatched to the 1800 block of East Oliver Street for a shooting. Upon arrival, officers located Shannon Barmer, age 22, who was suffering from a gunshot wound to the back of the head. She was transported to an area hospital and died on Saturday. Homicide detectives are investigating this incident. A few hours later, at 11:57 p.m., officers were called to the 3600 block of 5th Street in South Baltimore. Officials say Corey Augustus, age 33, was found with multiple gunshot wounds to his body. He was pronounced dead on the scene by medics. Homicide detectives are investigating this incident. Then around 3 a.m. Saturday, police in Northeast Baltimore were called to the 6600 block of Aquarius Court to investigate a shooting. As crews were arriving to the scene, they observed a vehicle driving away at a high rate of speed. Officers were able to stop the vehicle and noticed the 36-year-old driver had a gunshot wound to his shoulder. The victim told police he was driving when he heard a loud bang, his window shattered, and he realized he had been shot. The victim is listed in good condition at the hospital. Northeast shooting detectives are investigating this shooting. Then at approximately 3:25 a.m., officers responded to an area hospital where a shooting victim had just walked in. Upon arrival, officers located a 21-year-old male who was suffering from a non-life-threatening gunshot wound. The victim told detectives he was parked on the 2700 block of Barclay Street waiting for a friend. As the friend approached his vehicle, he appeared to be engaged in a verbal dispute with an unknown male. As the friend got into the victim's car, the unknown male produced a handgun and shot through the front windshield of the car, striking the victim. The suspect looked to be in his mid-20s and was wearing a red t-shirt. Northern District detectives are investigating this incident. WMAR2 News. Police were called to the 100 block of Walnut Ave at 3:47 p.m. Sunday, March 29th for a report of a shooting. Detectives determined that the suspect was involved in an altercation with a woman at his home when another man tried to intervene. The suspect shot the man in his lower body and was then subdued and disarmed by other people in the home who held him down until officers arrived on the scene. Both the victim and the suspect were taken to local hospitals for treatment. The victim is expected to survive. The suspect, identified as 59-year-old James Thomas Blue, is charged with attempted first-degree murder, first-degree assault, second-degree assault, and the use of a firearm in a felony. He is held on a no-bail status at the Baltimore County Detention Center, pending a bail review hearing. A second Baltimore County police officer has tested positive for the you-know-what. The Baltimore County Police Department said they are working with the Department of Health to initiate a contact trace review, which will enable them to know who might have been exposed. Currently, there are 32 officers self-quarantining, but the department says the number may increase as they continue to trace contact. WMAR2 News: Baltimore police are investigating a homicide on the city's east side. On March 29, 2020 at approximately 5 p.m., officers responded to the scene of a woman who was shot at Linwood and Ashland Avenue. She was taken to shock trauma, where she died a short time later. Homicide detectives have yet to identify a suspect or determine a motive. WJZ: Police are investigating after a deadly quadruple shooting in South Baltimore on Saturday night. Police were called to the 1100 block of Washington Boulevard at 9:30 p.m. for report of a shooting. When officers arrived, they found a 27-year-old man with gunshot wounds to his back. The victim was pronounced dead at the scene. A second victim, a 27-year-old man, was also discovered. He was suffering from non-life-threatening wounds to his arm and buttocks. The two people shot in the ass in one episode, really? The victim was taken to an area hospital for treatment. A short time later, a 19-year-old man walked into an area hospital suffering from non-life-threatening gunshot wounds to his arm and legs. A 16-year-old also walked into an area hospital and was suffering from non-life-threatening gunshot wounds to the right arm and legs. Homicide detectives are investigating this incident and have learned 3 shooters exited a vehicle and opened fire on the victims. The shooters then fled the location.
It's actually the second quadruple shooting in a week in the city, and now one father says enough is enough.
This is Harm City Daily signing off. And if you've got some Kevlar laying around, maybe take it to a tailor and have him fashion you some bulletproof drawers.
You shot me in the ass. Okay, wait. Okay.